Hi Sagittarius, welcome back to the Astrology 33 channel. This is your May 2026 tarot reading. Thank you to those of you who have liked, viewed, shared, and subscribed to the channel. I appreciate all of that. For those of you new to the channel, as far as will be in front of us, it's a 12-card spread with each of those cards representing a different house of the zodiac. Starting with your sign, Sagittarius is the first house, all the way through to Scorpio representing the 12th. When we get to roll that, we'll pull an oracle card as well for some additional insight. As far as the decks being used this month, for the main tarot deck, we have the Brady Tarot, and for the Oracle deck, we have the Wisdom of the Oracle. But we're actually going to start the reading off a roll notice astrology as we have in front of us to get an idea where your focus should be as far as that goes. Alright, so we have 9. So 9th house energy for you guys is Leo. Now, astrologically speaking, that area of the zodiac is a little quiet right now. But yeah, could just be focusing on that area of life nonetheless. And 9th house in general points to philosophy, higher learning, and foreign affairs. We also have the sun. So currently the sun is in Taurus, which for you guys is your 6th house, which points to health, work, daily routines. And then on the 20th of May, it'll move into your 7th house of Gemini, which points to partnerships, contracts, and relationships. And we have Virgo. So for you guys, Virgo is actually your 10th house of career and social status. It's another area of the zodiac that's a little quiet. I mean, we do still have the South Node traveling through there, but other than that, no other transits passing through there just yet. But we'll keep all that in mind as we go through the main spread. Alright, so for the first house, which points primarily to personality, self-awareness, and appearance, we have the moon. So this is actually fitting on one hand because at the very end of May, there's going to be a full moon in your sign. But of course, we're actually starting the month of May off with a full moon in Scorpio, which is your 12th house. So that could be a pretty heavy energy as well. And then in the middle of the month, there's going to be a new moon in Taurus, which we mentioned earlier is your 6th house of health, work, daily routines. So yeah, so it could just be one of those things where those 3 particular major lunar cycles for the month are going to be pivotal times for you guys this month, so definitely be on the lookout for those 3 time periods that I mentioned there. But in general, it could also just be saying that maybe you're feeling like you can't see a situation too clearly, so you could just be trying to rely a little bit more on your intuition to navigate through those energies. Alright, so for the second house, which points to possession, self-worth, and finances, we have the Father of Horns. So really, this is the equivalent of the King of Cups, which is Scorpio energy as well. But yeah, so seeing this here could just be saying, well, on the one hand, like we said right at the start of the month, there's going to be that full moon there. So it could just be saying that early in the month, you might actually be trying to figure out what you want to do with your finances, right? You might actually feel like you're alone on an island when it comes to your viewpoints around finance. Maybe you have a different approach to things than most people in your environment do. It could also just be saying that you might feel like you're having to rely heavily on yourselves when it comes to that area of life too, right? So let's say if typically if you were in a relationship, for example, and recently that connection broke up, now you might be adjusting to, okay, well now you're the only source of income in the household, right? So it could just be stuff like that too. But mostly, I feel like this is just saying, no, you have a bit of a different approach to finances than most around you, which doesn't have to be a bad thing, of course. So for your third house, which points primarily to communication, short journey, and siblings, we have English. So this is basically the 9 of arrows, which is 9 of swords in a lot of decks. But seeing this here, they'll just be saying that, yeah, you might actually have some difficulty when it comes to communicating this month. Now, the first thing that comes to mind with that is, you guys, your third house of communication is Aquarius. And Pluto is currently in Aquarius, and it's actually going to start a retrograde on the 6th of May. So that could be part of what it could be about. But what can happen with a transit like that? Having such a heavy energy in your third house communication, it could make you come across as a bit more controlling when it comes to your communication, even if you don't outwardly intend it that way, right? So it could be kind of a blind spot for you. So especially, like, let's say for people who are used to you just saying what comes to your mind right away, things along those lines there, but now you're trying to be a lot more controlled and reserved with your communication, right? A lot more deliberate. They might feel like something's a little bit off because that's not how you usually would come across, right? So it could just be one of those things where you feel like there's these misunderstandings with the people around you, but you can't put your finger on why that's the case, right? Because again, it's something that's in your subconscious. You're not actually aware that, oh, okay, this transit's impacting how I communicate. It could just be one of those things where you're the last one to realize that. All right, so for your fourth house, which points primarily to home roots and family, we have joy. So this is really the equivalent of the Ace of Cups. So yeah, to see this here, it could just be saying maybe because of what we just talked about, right? Where you might feel like you keep running into a brick wall when it comes to communicating with others. It could just be saying that when you're in your home environment, keeping to yourselves, right? Or maybe just around those who are closest to you, right? As far as family, could just be one of those things where that's where you really feel at home this month. You feel a lot more joyful, a lot less stressed. So it could just be one of those things where it could just be saying you might be a little bit more withdrawn this month. All right, so for your fifth house, which points in general to romance, creativity, and children, we have apathy. So this is the Four of Horns, the equivalent of the Four of Cups. And yeah, it could just be saying that maybe you find that you lack interest in certain things when it comes to creative projects, right? Maybe even when it comes to romance, right? You just might feel like you don't have much desire for that right now. Well, understandable, right? If you feel like when you're communicating with people, everything gets jumbled up. But yeah, could just be saying that that's just how you're feeling currently. It doesn't have to be a long-term thing necessarily, but thinking of that makes me think of the fact as well that you do have Saturn currently moving through your fifth house. So fifth house being a more light, playful energy, but then having Saturn sitting in there, right? That could actually lead to that energy of apathy coming to the surface. So in that regard, it makes sense. All right, so for the sixth house, which we technically see, given that the sun is currently in your sixth house as well, we have mourning. So this is the three of arrows, three of swords in most decks. So yeah, so this could just be saying that maybe around your work environment, right? There could have been an ending recently. Possibly even just around a routine that you might have had for a while. That could be coming to an end as well. Maybe even a routine that you might have had with a friend, right? So let's just say you and a friend would always, I don't know, go out for dinner once a week, right? Now maybe there's a little bit of strained communication and your guys aren't doing that as much. Or possibly someone that you used to see quite often on a friendship level, maybe they moved to a different area or something like that, right? So there could be some disappointment around that. Of course, this can be directly related to work too, but for some of you, I feel like it's a bit more of an external dynamic than that. All right, so for the seventh house, which, as we mentioned, the sun will eventually move there on the 20th of May, we have the Emperor. So this is the major arcana card for Aries, which is your fifth house. So if there is some kind of a disconnect when it comes to romance for you guys, right, like we just talked about with that, with the energy in the fifth house, and now seeing this in the seventh house, could go back to what I was saying with the anguish energy in the third house, which is, like I said, maybe you are coming across a bit more controlling than you're even aware of, right? So again, like I said, I don't think there's intent behind it. I don't think you're trying to be controlling in any way. But again, like I said, having a heavy, powerful energy like Pluto in your third house of communication could be impacting the way you're perceived when it comes to your communication at this time. So if you feel like what's going on with my romantic life, right? Things are strained, feels like can't really talk with each other as well. We used to, that could be part of what's at play there. But yeah, on a more positive note, this could also just be encouraging you to take the lead too when it comes to your relationship. So, you know, so yeah, especially if you think of the traditional artwork for the Four of Cups, right, which is basically what this is the equivalent of. We see someone sitting with their arms crossed, right, and there's cups in front of them, and there's another cup being offered, and they clearly don't look happy with what's being offered, right? So the messaging there is like, well, if you keep getting more of what you don't want, then the answer there would be to go after what you do want, right? So another way this could be playing out for some of you is to say that, yeah, well, you feel like that area of your life is a little bit lacking, then you're being called to actually just take the lead there and try to seek out what you do want. All right, so for your eighth house energy, which generally points to death, rebirth, intimacy, and investments, we have victory. So this is a Leo energy here. And to see this could just be saying that if you have had some difficulties around that area of life, like this is saying you could be overcoming them. Uh, maybe there were just some obstacles in the way. So let's say if it was around investments, right, there might have been a bumpy ride with the investments, but now they're finally starting to pay off. If this was maybe around blockages with intimacy, right, could just be saying you might be overcoming those this month. But either way, definitely looks like a good energy to see in this house because 8th house in general can be a bit heavier at times. All right, so for your 9th house energy, we have the Daughter of Arrows. So this is the equivalent of the Page of Pentacles, Page of Swords, rather. So yeah, so when this comes to 9th house, could just be saying that maybe you're communicating some new beliefs recently, right? So maybe that's part of the English thing, right? So maybe you've been shifting what you believe in recently, right? Or at least questioning those beliefs, but maybe having difficulty around communicating that, right? So given that 9th house in general points to philosophy, higher learning, foreign affairs, right? Could just be saying that maybe you have been discovering that maybe your belief systems are shifting a little bit, but maybe you're just feeling like you haven't quite figured out a comfortable way to communicate that to those around you, right? So that could be what you're trying to figure out now, the best way to do so. Okay, so for your 10th house energy, which we mentioned points primarily to career and social status, we have optimism. So this is an Aries energy here. So yeah, so even though we see a little bit of the apathy energy, mourning in the 6th house, right? Anguish in the 3rd. To see this in the 10th house to me ultimately says that could just be one of those things where you might just ride that wave for a little bit where you do feel like maybe a little bit of a defeatist attitude around certain things, but this also says to me that at the end of the day, though, you will start to feel like, okay, whatever this was about, right, things feeling a little bit blocked off, like you're going to start to get a little bit more clarity there, and then the optimism will come back around. So it could just be as simple as, like we said, given that the moon is in the 1st house, for some of you, it could be as early as very early in the month, right after that Scorpio full moon, when you start to feel the energy lift a little bit more and you feel that optimism returning. And then for others of you, might take until the very end of the month when we had the full moon in your sign, but looks like you are going to be shifting toward a little bit more optimism as we go. All right, so for your 11th house, which generally points to friendships, groups, hopes, and wishes, we have the Magician. So yeah, so see this here. What I'm getting from this primarily is to say that, so let's say if you are, if your belief system is changing somewhat, right, and you feel like maybe the people who you used to communicate with a lot more comfortably, maybe it's a little bit more difficult now because your beliefs are changing, right? It could just be one of those things where if you feel a little bit isolated there, the Magician says to me that you do have the power to actually find the groups that do fit with your belief system, right? Find stronger connections around you. So like this is saying you do have the skills at your disposal to actually make that happen to where you do have a more supportive environment. And for the 12th house, which generally points to spirituality, blind spots, and mental health, we have fulfillment. So this is the 9 of Wands, the equivalent to the 9 of Cups. So yeah, so the seed is here to me is a pretty strong way to wrap the spread as far as, to me, this says you have strong inner peace, right? And then that could be going back to what we were saying, where when you withdraw and you are alone in your home environment, you might feel a lot more joyful, right? So yeah, so that could be what it is. It could just be that for a lot of you, just might be in a bit of a transition phase, right? And until you're able to clearly articulate that, right, without being misunderstood, right, without people thinking that there's something inauthentic with your communication when really it's just, you've been going through changes, but you're just not finding the right words to communicate that, right? Could just be saying that at least you have that inner peace, right, where like, okay, You might even come to peace with the fact that, okay, people aren't getting where I'm coming from yet. Eventually they will. I'm at peace with it, right? And then when the time comes, the time comes. So that could be how some of you might be looking at it. And the bottom of the deck, we have Passage. So this is basically the Six of Arrows, and that's also an Aquarius energy. So yeah, so that could be aligning with what we were just saying there, right? Where, like I said, I get the energy of you guys making peace around, well, if I'm misunderstood, I'm misunderstood, right? It doesn't mean it didn't bother you for a while, might still bother you from time to time, but I feel like it's ultimately you extending yourself some grace, right? Where, like, okay, yeah, I am undergoing some changes, and until I'm able to fully articulate it, then yeah, you're going to run into those misunderstandings at times. Not the end of the world, right? When the time's right, I'll find the words. So that could be how you're looking at it. But we'll see what the Oracle card adds to the mix. So I'm just going to give this a few shuffles and then we'll pull a card. Alright, we'll take this card here. Let's get this out of the way and we'll see what you got. Alright, we have TikTok. There's the artwork. And the number is 30. So we'll see what this has to say. Alright, essential meanings says timelessness, divine timing, immeasurable time. The Oracle's message. When humans created time, everything changed and contracted. People have come to look at life in a linear way, imagining that the past is behind them and the future is ahead of them. But what if that isn't true at all? What if everything, creativity, beauty, chaos, and order, were happening now in a glorious timelessness? You have all the time in the world to co-create the life you desire, so release your agenda. Let go of your need to shape each moment to your expectations, knowing that what is yours will never be withheld from you. Miracles are here right now, and always show up when you need them, right on time. So, that definitely sounds like a solid message for those of you if you are feeling that anguish energy that we talked about in the third house, and even the apathy energy we see for the fifth house too. The relationship message says love, the fulfillment of desire, and even the body's reproductive cycles have their own timetable. Some things are preordained and cannot be coerced. Everything has its season, its divine and appropriate timing, especially when it comes to matters at heart. Remember that you always have enough time for love, to find it, to nurture it, to give and receive it. Its clock is eternal and ticks according to the beating of your heart, in perfect rhythm. Isn't that wonderful to know? Love is always right on time. So yeah, so that's a strong message there too, especially for those of you with December energy, if it is playing out in a way where you're constantly trying to control how things play out within your love lives. That sounds like a good message there, right? Which is say that the more you relax into things, the quicker you'll find things improve. And the prosperity message says your prosperity is co-created by your endeavors as they occur in human-made time and the eternal efforts of your most important manifestation partner, spirit, in a divine, measureless time. So keep doing what you're doing. Stay positive and make a commitment to remain in high vibration thoughts and feelings. If you heed the message of this card, it will seem as if you will align with your highest calling and your highest good in no time at all, like magic. So what's all the fuss about not having enough time? The prosperous life that is yours will never pass you by. So that was an interesting message too, especially the part as if by magic, seeing the magician in the 11th house, right? So maybe this is even saying that, as you interact with people in your environment, by doing so, you might actually come across the right connections that could help you in that area of life as well. So yeah, we'll wrap up there and hope it resonates for you guys. All right, bye.